we were traveling across the United States, and it was sort of astounding to see what people were drinking with their food.
An icon and a true inspiration to myself and to many around the world, Francis Ford Coppola.
Whatever you're having with your meal, it's going to bring you pleasure, and the main quality is it's a wine that will never let you down.
The 6-time Academy Award-winning director of such epic films as the Godfather trilogy, been a central figure in contributing to the shape of contemporary American cinema.
I want to honor also the Coppola family for their involvement in the wine industry.
I'd like to introduce an icon and a true inspiration to myself and to many around the world, Francis Ford Coppola. Francis is best known as a 6-time Academy Award-winning director of such epic films as the Godfather trilogy, Apocalypse Now. As a writer and director-producer, he's been a central figure in contributing to the shape of contemporary American cinema. His creative pursuits run wide. However, he's one of those rare individuals who can turn his dreams into viable realities. Perhaps because of his clarity in seeing life, being full of all the possible ways to tell stories, wanting to be told. He tells these stories in a variety of ways these days through travel with his Coppola family hideaways and with winemaking, today's focus of our chat. A Coppola family tradition for several generations. He currently owns Inglenook in Napa Valley and Francis Ford Coppola Winery in Sonoma. Welcome, Francis, and thank you for taking the time today.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. So, Laura, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. Hi, Francis. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm fine. My greetings to you wherever you are. I guess you're in UK, so my greetings there.
Thank you very much. Well, we have some of your wines here today, and the first one I want to talk about is the Claret. So, I've got a glass right here. We understand this is your oldest and best-selling wine in the Coppola portfolio. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about it and why you feel it's had so much success.
Which one is this? The Claret you have?
Yeah, the Claret.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I was first drinking wine with my dinner as a matter of fact and stuff, we were traveling across the United States, and it was sort of astounding to see what people were drinking with their food. I made a film called The Rain People, which we drove from New York to, I guess, as far as we got was Nebraska. And wherever we went, you know, we were on the road making a film about someone on the road while we were on the road. And people were drinking with their meals Coca-Cola, milk, beer, tea. They were drinking. Very rarely would you see wine on the table of the American. But you know, I would enjoy a good glass of wine, and very often, especially in Nebraska, but other places we would buy a steak and barbecue it, and you could buy, you know, for like $5 enough steak to supply, you know, the whole family. And there was a wine that came from Australia. I forget what it was. I think it was called the Penfolds. Well, at any rate, it was a Shiraz. And I said, that's a wine that never lets you down. If they're offering that wine, you know, for the price, you were going to get a good glass of wine. And I always respected it and sought it out, because wherever we were, you know, when we wanted a good glass of wine, when I saw that wine, I would buy it. And oddly enough, the Coppola Claret has become just that. I can't say that I knew or intended that, but its main quality is it's a wine that will never let you down. You buy a bottle of the Claret, and whatever you're having with your meal, you know that the wine is going to be a good accompaniment with it, and it's going to bring you pleasure and be complex enough and enjoyable and long lasting in taste. And so that in a funny way, what I attribute the success of that wine is that it will never let you down. It will go with the foods that you select, and even some that you wouldn't think it goes. It goes with Italian food very well. It goes with pizza very well. It goes with steak fantastically, and it will simply never let you down.
What is your favorite thing to have with this, personally? Steak. Okay.
No. And these days I have been eating much less. I lost a lot of weight a couple of years ago, and so when you asked my granddaughter about pasta, clearly I was on my way to being 300 pounds, and so I had to start modifying and substituting. If you know that there's a food that's not really good for you, which pasta is not really good for me, that you tend to try to find other things to substitute for, food that is friendly to you, which is vegetables are friendly to you. I mean, you can eat all the vegetables you want pretty much, and you're not going to be 300 pounds, and they can't say the same about pasta. So I haven't really been demonstrating my pasta skills to my family in recent years, although I do have some tricks that I've evolved that are interesting, which I'll tell you about if you want me to.
Yes, please.
Well, I invented a concept, in movies, what makes the movie appear to move is a phenomenon they call persistence of vision. In other words, when you see a frame of a horse galloping, and then you see another frame of the horse galloping a little later, and so forth for several of those moments, the mind has a thing called persistence of vision, in which the vision that you had of the previous image stays in your mind and becomes the next image, and that gives an illusion, and I say illusion of motion, because as we know, a motion picture is not really a motion picture. It's a series of non-motion pictures, one after another, which the mind and its persistence of vision interprets for you as motion. So what is persistence of taste? My concept was that what I thought is that if you make a food, and if the eye sees the food that you think you're eating, let's say a spaghetti. I make a very good classic spaghetti, basilico pepperoncini, which is just a classic spaghetti with basil and tomatoes. And so what I do is I make a very little of that spaghetti, just that much, if you were to hold it in your hand. And when I prepare it, I also make an amount of zucchini that has been spiralized to be like spaghetti. So I have this amount of zucchini that is heated just for a few minutes in hot water, and then I have the real spaghetti, and then I have the sauce and the basil. And what I do is I take the zucchini and I put that on the bottom, and I cover it completely with the real spaghetti. And then on top of that, I put the basil and then the tomato sauce. And so when you eat it, you think you're getting a spaghetti, but the classic spaghetti. And the first few steps as you bites, as you swirl it around and taste it, is very satisfying and enjoyable. But little by little, you're getting more of the zucchini underneath it. So it feels like you're getting more of the same, but in fact, you're not. There's a little substitution act. It's a trick, just like the motion picture is a trick. And you enjoy it just as much because the pleasure persists. And even on the third and fourth bite, which are really not getting a lot of spaghetti, you're getting more of the zucchini, which of course is totally non-caloric. Vegetables are a great deal for you because you can eat them, enjoy them, and you don't get fat. And so I said, my God, this is persistence of taste. I've come up with a new theory of how I can enjoy a bowl of spaghetti maslicata, and not get fat. And then let me try it with something else. And I made a chocolate mousse, which was on the underside, it was a sort of, it was a yogurt, chocolate flavored yogurt, low fat, Greek, very, very non-fattening. And then on top was about 1/4 of an inch of the real thing. And then, so when you got it, it looked like you were getting this dessert. And when you took the first spoonfuls of it, you totally enjoyed it. But really, after a while, you were getting the persistence of taste, where you were tasting the real thing, and little by little, it wasn't the real thing anymore, but you thought it was, and so you enjoyed it completely. So that's my discovery on how I managed to not be over 300 pounds, which is definitely where I was going if I had not tried to modify what I was eating.
You learned all the hacks at the place that you went to, the camp.
I went to Duke Fitness. Duke Fitness Center was great. It was like going to college, and you go there, and all the courses in psychology, why people eat too much, in fitness, what are the good exercises, and what is the proper way to do them. In nutrition, what foods are good for you and essential to you, really, and that you have to include. Because we must have a degree of fat, but you can have a degree of fat that's olive oil or avocados, which are sort of healthy fats, or you could get all the today fried food, which are totally unhealthy types of fats. You need what do they call it? Roughage. In other words, you have to have a degree of that bulk that comes on the outside of vegetables. So you learn. It's like going to college, and you learn the sort of the reality of this, and then you go as a group, because you're with a lot of people trying to lose weight, and you're with some ladies who are 350 pounds, they're going to die if they don't learn how to lose weight. And you go out with them to a fast food restaurants, and you realize that one small item that you might order there is like 3 times your caloric intake that you should have. Plus, it's made up of fats that are bad for you, and other food that's just basically poison for you. Because anytime there's a business that's a surefire business like that, that people have to go to, like to eat, or to pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of opportunity in those businesses to make a lot of money. If the connection between unhealthy food and pharmaceuticals is logical, because if you can get people to eat a lot of unhealthy food for much of their youth when they're pretty resilient and strong, then it's clear they're going to have to take pharmaceuticals for the rest of their lives as a result of the damage that they're doing to their system. So there's economics behind all of this. But with food is a lot like relationships with other people. There are people. When I was a young guy, of course, I was girl crazy, as most 17-year-olds are, and I concluded, I said, let's face it, of the girls that I like, half of them don't care whether I live or die. They couldn't care whether they know me a little better or not. But half of them are sort of a little bit interested, that find something unique. So I'm just going to exclude the half that don't care whether I live or die. And I'm going to focus on the ones that are a little bit interested in me, because they're just as nice. And in fact, they're even nicer because they're not as self-absorbed or as, but it's the same with food. There's food that really does not like you. And many carbohydrates and well, certainly all junk food, and even too much of meat, it really doesn't like you, meaning it's not going to be good for you. But then there's a lot of food that really likes you, like that half of all the girls that, sort of think you're a little interesting. So just rule out the food that doesn't like you and focus on the ones that are because they're just as wonderful. In fact, they're more wonderful. And so when you start to really, when you think of the categories, they're the most wonderful foods in the world. Fruit. What's more wonderful than fruit? There's nothing can really compare with fruit. You can compare all the candy on earth. It's not anywhere near one natural apple, beautiful apple, or vegetables. Every single vegetable that there is an experience and food value and good vitamins and things. And really only a few of them, corn and potatoes and maybe beets and maybe a few others will add a lot to your calories. But and I've just named them, what did I say, 4 or 5 things, hardly any of the 30 or 40 vegetables that you could possibly eat. And all the others just like you a lot. Just if you can eat all you want of them, and they'll be happy, and you'll be healthy. Nuts are a wonderful category, and they're good for you, but you can't really eat too many of them because they can be fattening. So you sort of get it down to food groups that you focus on, and your success, therefore, will be greater because after a while, as I said, if you were now to offer me a wonderful Milky Way, or an apple, I'll take the apple.
How about grapes?
Or any fruit, really. Fruit is a gift of the gods. So are avocados in terms of a fat. And, and more and more we tend to move away from meat for complicated reasons. Meat is highly caloric. In fact, that was the real value of meat, was in the early primitive days, is that some meat could, people didn't eat as commonly. They were foragers and they had to scrounge around looking for stuff. But if you got some meat, that gave you a real shot of nutrition that you could grow with. And even if you think of Japan during the war, Japan was, they were as tough fighters as anyone could possibly be, but they were all pretty short. If you think the Japanese soldier in 1941 was, he was a short man, but that's because they didn't have meat in their diet. After the war, when meat really became, and dishes like sukiyaki, sukiyaki, and yakitori, those were really, they were very rarely eaten, and then post-war they were much more eaten. And now you have Japanese baseball players that are 6'2", so you could really see the effect of meat as a powerful growth food. But I believe more in the Asian principle, is that a little bit of meat, if you're going to have meat, a little bit of meat with vegetables is a better solution. So at any rate, at Duke, I had opportunity to just think about this kind of thing and mull over, what I was going to do, because, I was, how old was I? I was, in my, just beginning to be maybe 70, and am I going to be 300 pounds now for this remainder of my life? And how many 300-pound old men do you see walking around? Not many. So I had I came to a turning point, and I love to eat, and I love to drink wine, and I love all of the celebrations of life. But there comes a point where you have to learn how to do it intelligently. And the good news of that is that if you're able to do it, there's just as much pleasure. It's not, you're not really giving up the joy of eating. You're not at all. You still have it, but you have it in a way that makes sense with the other important thing, which is your health.
Well, the last time we spoke, you said that you were drinking less wine, but it was a rare treat. So how often are you drinking something like the claret or your director's cut cinema?
Once a week.
Once a week?
Once a
Which
week.
one? Which one are you gravitating towards?
Well, I like them both. They're both good wines. I'm in a position at my age and my situation of life and what's in the wine cellar that I could have the greatest wines in the world every night, once a week. In other words, for me to drink anything less than one of the great wines of the world is not a necessity. But I find I still gravitate towards claret. Or what is that other one? Is that a Zinfandel?
It's the cinema, the director's cut cinema.
Oh, I like cinema. Both of them are favorite wines of me. The cinema is a little more expensive than the claret, I think. But cinema is a favorite of mine.
Talk to me about the label on director's cut cinema. It's really, really unique.
Well, it's based on a zoetrope strip. The zoetrope was the early toy in the 19th century home that people had, a stereoscope where they could look at stereoscope pictures, and some had a zoetrope, and a zoetrope was a drum, and you put a strip in it and spin it around and show it to the kids, and you see looking in it a little animated little mouse running around and jumping over a cheese or something like that. And if you change the strip, you got a little short moving film. And this is of course, the beginning of cinema in 1880. If you were in a somewhat to-do household that had a zoetrope or a number of the devices, there was zoetrope, a praxinoscope, which had mirrors. You were getting the beginning of a treat of a little movie. And we had the idea to take a zoetrope. We have a collection of zoetropes because our company was called American Zoetrope, is called American Zoetrope. And we had this idea that we would take a zoetrope a strip, a real one, and wrap it around the bottle. Well, of course, that was an engineering nightmare, which everyone said, well, the labeling machine can't possibly stop. It's running bottles, it wants to put it on real fast, and actually wrap the label around it like that. So we, undaunted, we engineered how that would work. And in fact, we came up with a machine that is able to wrap the label around that way. It slows the whole process down, but we do it, and it's a wonderful label, and it is actually the reproduction of a real zoetrope strip. It's authentic.
It's so cool. I love the look of it.
That's important to our company. Our company was founded on, and it was my children who really came up with it. They asked us when we were going to go into this business and the wine business and food and things. What's our mission statement? What are we trying to do? And I don't know who specifically came up with it, but I think it was definitely the kids, that our mission statement was quality, authenticity, and pleasure. Quality, because if you buy something, you expect it to be of the very best quality possible. Authenticity, because although there are a million definitions of what a pizza could be, but there's also an authentic pizza where it's exactly 12.5 inches in diameter and it's made in a certain way and it has certain, in other words, there is an authentic pizza. Of course, nowadays you could get pizza with every novelty known to man, pizza with pineapples or frankfurters or God knows what. And it's true, pizza in Italian just means pie, but pizza, as was brought back by the American GI after World War II. Pizza was unknown in America. We as Italians, we knew what pizza was because my father would take us to a local pizzeria and we would get a pizza, but my friends had no idea what a pizzeria was and what a pizza was. He only knew about it because we were Italian and he was a musician. And this was New York, where there's every possible kind of restaurant. But after World War II, many of the GIs, the American soldiers who had fought in the European war, had come up through Naples and then up through going further north into Rome and basically chasing the Germans, the Nazis out of Italy, because although Italy was an ally in the Axis power, Mussolini being a fascist and really the prototype for Hitler to copy. Mussolini came way before Hitler and it gave a helping hand to Hitler, so that the Italian fascists were allied with the Germans. But as they were losing the war, the Italians don't want to fight anyway. They want to have fun and eat and have children, So the Germans were in Italy sort of very tough against the Italians because they felt that they were letting them down. So that when the Americans came up, they encountered more Germans than they encountered Italians, but they also drank wine and had pizza and brought Coca-Cola and cigarettes. So when the American came back from Italy, he brought with him pizza. And now there are many people who think, oh, pizza's an American dish. But no, it's not only Italian from Naples, but it was brought by the American GI who experienced it firsthand. So they knew what a real pizza was. A real pizza is very different than a fake pizza. It's funny how sometimes things like a really good cup of espresso or cappuccino, simple as it is, it's hard to make. And it's hard to make because it's so simple. And most people can't be simple. And a pizza is very simple to make. Basically, it's a certain diameter in circumference, 11.5 inches, and it's beat on the marble. It's not all that thing in New York, throwing it up in the air and catching it like that. That's not the real way. It's slapped on the marble. And the fact that it's slapped, it's hard to do. All my life, I've tried to master the real technique of slapping the pizza dough on the marble. I'm not able. But the slapping tends to thin it out in the center and make the crust big and round. And then it has certain toppings, and the toppings are very specific. They are either the classic one, which is tomato sauce and basil and olive oil, or they are, there may be a dozen classic Neapolitan toppings. Nowadays, there's everything under the earth, because it's not really. So authenticity was very important to me, that what we do is authentic. And then pleasure is the whole reason for doing it, is that you're bringing people pleasure, whether it's through wine or a beautiful stay in a fabulous country like Belize, or a wonderful meal and a glass of wine. It's all, and pleasure is good. Even pleasure, they try to make a misunderstanding about it. If it is pleasure, it's good for you. Now, there are many things that the pleasure you get from it isn't worth the trouble that you're going to get later. But you have to use some discernment. You have to realize that, you can't be a glutton about pleasure. You can't just go, give me pleasure, give me pleasure, give me pleasure, because you'll make a lot of mistakes doing it that way. But pleasure is a pretty good trust that something's good for you. And, if you take a time to enjoy it, take a time to enjoy a deep breath once in a while. Just what a pleasure that is. And it's yours for free, and many things are like that we don't take advantage because we think, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. Necessity is a bad thing, but there's no need to, but it's not necessary to live with necessity.
What brings you the most pleasure these days?
What gives me the most pleasure? I think very simple thing. Seeing a beautiful tree. I love trees, A lot of young people I know say, yeah, but we're going to go and see Mars. And I say, well, I know that's wonderful, but I don't want to go anywhere where there are no trees. I want to stay with the trees. The trees are nice. They're my friends. I love the trees. Or to see a beautiful light on the hill, to see children playing and laughing and being happy, to enjoy a wonderful meal, even though it's healthy for me, to have a glass of wine. Sometimes I do what Gio said. Sometimes I have a glass of wine which is an inch of claret, and the rest is. I have this new invention I did is I make these big ice cubes out of lemon juice. So I take a big ice cube out of lemon juice and I put it in a glass and I put some claret and then I fill it with dietetic ginger ale. This is the one day I'm not allowed to. In other words, I drink real wine or have a glass of wine. A glass of wine is incredibly fattening. You know, a glass of wine is like a dessert. So you know, and any drink. I mean, don't get me started of what's the great drink from tequila? The
Margarita.
margarita. Don't get me going. How many calories are in a margarita? But you know, you learn to get around and navigate that world of pleasure. But don't give pleasure a bad name. They try to give pleasure a bad name because they don't want you to take what pleasures are rightly yours. They want to control them. But the truth of the matter is most pleasures are a good indication that it's good for you. And then you begin to learn those pleasures that bring about a lot of troubles later on that are not worth them, and other factors. If you're interested in this, you should read the philosopher, greatly misunderstood, named Epicurus, Greek philosopher. He was a very wise man, and it's not the so-called Epicurean theory of that Epicurus represented just incredible gorging and eating food. Epicurus isn't that at all. He said famously, "I could just have a little bit of barley and water, and I'll be the happiest man on earth." He did not believe in overindulging the pursuit of pleasure. That was something that others later tried to tag him with because they didn't want him to be followed as assiduously as he was.
I think wine is a pleasure.
Wine
Drinking
is and it's a good food for you, you know. But too much of it wouldn't be good. You have to enjoy, you know, wine in moderation.
Unless you have bottles of Coppola family wines just open in front of you, and then you have to drink them all.
Well, I have more Coppola family wine than anybody on earth, I would guess. And if I just went and started drinking it all, I would be dead in 6 months. But fortunately I have enough to share with my friends and other great wines of the world. I could look forward to. Pardon my philosophical approach here today, but you know, when you start to get to be my age, you start to be more philosophical about what really life is about. It's not about the things that we thought it was about when we were young. It's about other things that are actually more simple to obtain.
Like what have you found?
Well, that the things you really need to live and be without want, you can have, as you know, you can have easily. It's that whenever there are things you want that will involve struggle to get, better not to struggle. You know, just take what's easy. But you know, it's hard to tell a young person because a young man or a young woman wants to make their place in the world, and an older man has already found a secure place in the harbor, though, so he can come and spout these kind of philosophies. But anything that involves a lot of struggle, you know, may not be worth it.
Before you told me that family to you is the most important thing in the world. So philosophically, as you've gotten older, have you discovered that even more so that's the most important thing?
Well, what I have discovered is that I guess I knew, but I didn't know as convincingly as I know now is that my family is the whole human race, because even like we're sitting here, I'm sitting opposite you. If you go back to your great grandmother as far back as you could go, and I went back to my great grandmother as far back as I could go, she would be the same woman. So you and I are in the same family. Now that doesn't mean that in the Homo sapiens species, which we are, that there weren't other families with another great grandmother. But the truth of the matter is none of them survived, and only one family, one Homo sapien family survived. And for a while in the early days, there were only 5,000 of them as they struggled to find food when they were crossing from Africa to Yemen, when the waters were low so they could walk across and live on mollusks and oysters and things. But we were only 5,000 human beings of this family, and there was no other family. The other families had all died out, and they hadn't died out quite yet when we went across Yemen, but they were going to die out. And today, there's only one human family that exists, and every human being, whether they are black or blonde or have Asian eyes or different characteristics, they are the same family. Because as we know, that what you look like is affected over 2-3 generations by the conditions. If you were in Tibet and the wind was all sandy and blowing, and those people whose eyes were not as wide, so they would be blinded by it, did better. And since they did better, they were more likely to have children, and those children were more likely to have eyes like their parents. Or if you were in Scandinavia, where there was no vitamin D, and your blonde hair and blue eyes would get more of the vitamin D. So Scandinavians started to look blonde and blue-eyed, and Africans who remain African, but the powerful sun retain the original look of the original human, and the Asian with the who was fighting the sands in Asia had less of it. So every family group changed according to where they were living and what were the conditions, and what was the best format to survive and to have more children. And so, of course, the children brought about those characteristics, and after 3-4 generations, they all looked a little different. So it's hard to go to someone who doesn't look like you and say, you're my relative. But it's true. So if you murder someone, you're murdering someone in your family. No matter, I realize in war they say, oh, it's okay to murder them, but it's not, because you're murdering your own family member, because we are all family. We are the human being family, and it's one family. And I think maybe the pandemic has helped to show that we're not the them and us really as much as we think. We're really all us.
Well said. Well, I know I don't have you for very much longer. We don't have you for very much longer, I don't think. So a few more questions.
Please.
I guess the first would be, are you launching any new wines soon that we should know about?
I think the area that we'd like to launch new wines is in the Gia area, because she's gung-ho to do that, and she represents a new taste, she being the youngest one of our family that who want to explore. That's why even not only new wines, but new packaging. I love the 1 liter bottle for the Gia wine, because you get a great big bottle. It's really quite a bit more wine than the classic wine bottle. And I love the bottle cap on top. I think that package is beautiful. And then with Gia's art on it, And the Gia wines are much more willing to experiment out of the norm or the classic. We tend to be a company that believes in the classics. You know, we make spirits, but we're not making peppermint gin and all these flavored liquors. We tend to be classicists. I tend to be a classicist. So we welcome Gia because Gia is the most experimental of our family, and we like to follow her lead as to these new wines that you see over there. I see there. I'm opposite. But yeah, and the orange wine has been a real success, and so I would say that our most exploratory company are the Gia wines, and of course, then there's the Claret and Diamond wines, which are much more classical, and as I like to say, will never let you down. And then on a higher price point is the director's cut, with cinema being one. And of course, we have 2 or 3 really luxury wines in the company. We have Archimedes, which is a wonderful wine, a very highly rated and a real pride and joy of our company. And we also have in that group the Domaine de Broglie, who is which is Oregon. That's the Archimedes that my friend from Belize is showing us, and de Broglie is from Oregon. De Broglie is a wonderful story. He was a noble family in France, a prince, in fact, a duke, and but he loved science, and he was one of the real founders of the quantum physics period. And I was always fascinated by this guy who was a prince, and he could hang out in Europe and be a prince and all that. I imagined the cool things that being a prince would be. And he was working in the lab and with his mathematics, and he was without a doubt a mathematical genius. So it's my pleasure to honor de Broglie, a great physicist, to honor Archimedes, perhaps one of the greatest scientific minds who ever lived. We have any other scientists? I like to honor scientists, but you know, and then there's of course Eleanor, which is a luxury wine, which you know, I've solved one of mankind's biggest problems, is how to honor his family. So I tend to make them into products. I tend to make them in wines. If I love you and I love them all, I'll make a wine for you.
Well, that is something to aspire to for sure, for everybody. Well, Francis, my last question for you before we have to sadly let you go, which we don't want to do, is what to you is the greatest luxury in life and why?
This is not as exciting a concept as I wish it could be, but I would say the greatest luxury in life is good health. Because if you have good health, then you can use your efforts and ability to have the second greatest luxury in life, which is good friends. If you have good health and good friends, you have everything. You don't need excess money. You don't need excess prestige. You don't need excess fame. But good health and good friends is quite sufficient.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you again and speaking to you, Gia. Kamal, I know, feels the same way.
Francis and Gia, I can't thank you enough. And beyond this time that you spent to us, you've been a big inspiration for me in our business. As in 1995, I went to Blankeno Lodge while I was leaving college, and I met you there. And I was able to get a bottle of wine signed from you in the Coppola family collection. And for 25 years, I've carried that bottle with me, and it says never give up. So throughout everything we've gone through, you've been a huge inspiration. So thank you, and thank you, Laura.
Well, thank you, and hopefully I'll see you again in Belize, and I'll give you another bottle of wine, which I'll also sign.
I look forward. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot for all of you. Hi, Gia, good to see you. I miss you.
I miss you too. Thank you.
Thank you both again.
Bye.
Thank you, and good luck to you on everything you're doing.
With us now, Gia, who is representing the fourth generation of the Coppola family in America and the third generation of the family's presence in filmmaking. Gia is an accomplished film writer and director, and also a talented photographer. She has made short films for Gucci, Opening Ceremony, and Zach Posen, and made her feature film directorial debut with Palo Alto in 2014. Her second film, Mainstream, had its world premiere at the 2020 Venice Film Festival. Currently, she is attached to direct the feature film, The Secret Life of the Lonely Doll. Gia is also a winemaker and was introduced to the finer qualities of wine by her grandfather, Francis Ford Coppola. And we have Gia with us now. Hi, Gia. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We are very happy to have you here and to do this wonderful tasting with you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we've got a bunch of wines to taste today from your line. So maybe you could talk to us first about the evolution of your red wine.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get into making the wines, but I also felt a little bit intimidated about just wines in general and what qualifies as good wine. So I really just sort of was basing it off of what my friends were liking and kind of learning through that. But I always really liked my grandma's Eleanor wine too. That's a little bit more jammy and darker. And so we kind of started with that, and then just with the label was using my photography, and now I come back at wine.
So how did the wine label evolve? How did it come to be going from the red to the other wines that you'll be showcasing today?
I had so many photos just stored from my college portfolio and just throughout the years, and I was starting to see other labels using their photographs, and I thought it was really alluring and appealing. And I didn't really have any sort of concept for like a designing a label, so it seemed fitting to just use my photos, and I have so many that it's nice to kind of find a purpose for them. But with sort of deciding which goes for what, it's very just kind of instinctual. Like I just thought the pink went well with the red, and then with my orange label, it's my friend. I have it here. This is my friend Jane Mosley that I did a photo shoot with her for a magazine called Puss Puss, which is like a cat, half cat, like fashion magazine. And I just was drawn to it. I like her expression, and I thought like, oh, orange and orange. It's not like anything that sophisticated. But with the sangria bottle you have over there, the label came from just visiting my uncle's movie set, A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III. And that was just sort of one of the extras sitting on an apple box. And, it went well with like all the little sort of images of she has like little plastic fruits next to her because she was playing Carmen Miranda. And then, sangria kind of gives me the reminder, using fruit and fruity.
So do you want to walk us through the wines and talk to us about how you enhance the flavor profile and what we should be tasting when we're drinking these?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess you're tasting the sangria, right?
This is the red.
Oh, the red. Okay. Well, I mean, as I said, I'm just really kind of learning, and it's all very instinctual. But I learned that like, it's definitely more of a jammy wine and kind of darker fruits, stone fruits, I think they said, and it's like a blend of Grenache and different kind of darker grapes. But and then the sangria, we did a lot of experiments of like, how can you preserve sangria in a just like to go style, I guess, like in a bottle, or, you know, a lot of the ones I was seeing were just like in cans, and they didn't taste very good in my opinion. They were like very sweet. And so how can you make a sangria that feels like when you actually make it fresh? And so with Jordan, the winemaker that I work with, she used a lot of like more cinnamon kind of Christmas flavors that I was drawn to, and we used the spirits that we make at the winery, one of the brandies. I feel like my grandpa can tell a story about why the brandy is called what it is, but yeah, I like that it, you know, doesn't feel too sweet, and yeah.
And the orange, the Riesling, I hear that there's an interesting story about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always curious what my friends are drinking. I feel like that's what I like to use this sort of brand for, is experimenting with the sort of newer wines that are up and coming, I guess. And I was in London at the time working on a commercial, and they took me to some little underground restaurant, and everyone was drinking orange wine, and I just really liked it because it was sort of like a kombucha and more like fermented tasting, and sort of lighter and fresh, but not a sort of in between of white and red. And then it just sort of was becoming really popular in the States. And I thought it would be so fun to do that with our wine. We don't have an orange wine. And I know that like it's sort of more appealing to millennials than older generations, because it kind of has like that fermented taste, and it can be really strong. So Jordan and I worked on doing like a more kind of introduction version of the orange wine that's a little bit more lighter and not as stringent, I guess.
For you, is the winemaking process similar in any way to the filmmaking process?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of basing it off of what feels right to you and what you would like to see, but also, I mean, there's all these different departments, and it's collaborative. And my grandpa is always talks about the comparison of the two kind of art forms that made it feel more tangible to kind of apply something that feels very visual and creative into this sort of new art form that is very like sensual.
And there seems to be a visual balance too with the wine and with the photographs that you have.
Yeah.
How would you, I mean, did you play off of the colors of the wine to choose which photographs to use as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of like, there wasn't anything intellectual about it beyond just sort of thinking, oh, the red would go nicely with a sort of pink colored label, or just being more drawn to certain color palettes of the photography that I had, but also using images that feel like they mean something to me, like they're of my friends, or little objects or experiences that I feel remind me of something that makes me happy.
That's great. Well, obviously you have an extensive family background in wine.
Whatever.
So what would you say is your earliest and happiest wine memory?
I don't remember my earliest. I remember like always sort of being allowed to have a little bit of wine on the table, and I really enjoyed mixing it with like Sprite or ginger ale, and that was always really exciting when I got to put a little bit of wine in my soda for dinner.
Make yourself a calimocho. And what did you feel like you wanted to bring a younger aesthetic? You mentioned millennials before, to the Coppola family wines with your labels and with the wines that you were choosing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I really went in with like that kind of agenda or target. I was just sort of going by what made sense to me. And like, I know when I buy wine, and when my friends buy wine, like we kind of stay within a certain price point. So a lot of it is based off of that. And, you know, you do kind of judge a book by its cover, and I was sort of looking at labels that looked exciting and alluring to kind of make my decision of when I would buy a wine or when my friends would buy a wine, and to make it seem just not intimidating, because there is such a prestige to winemaking, and making it kind of feel like a little bit of an introduction for 20-year-olds who are just sort of starting to get interested in wine and all of that kind of stuff.
Is that why the bottling too is it's very unique that you chose?
Yeah, I mean, also with my grandpa, he was sort of showing me different wine bottles that could be interesting and unique, and it seemed fun to kind of play around in that way. But I loved the bottle cap idea, because it's so easy. Like, you can just sort of knock it on a tabletop if you can't find a wine opener, or like if you're at a picnic, it's easy to kind of pop off. And I like the big styles, because I imagine the wine sort of being with a lot of friends, and having dinner parties and cooking with everybody, or having a picnic, or being at a concert where there's multiple people where you kind of need a little bit more wine. So I liked that kind of combo.
Well, now that you've done both, what do you find to be harder, movies or winemaking?
I don't know, they're both very hard, but they both have challenges in different ways. I think they're both kind of equal, if I can say that.
Do you enjoy one process over the other, or is it just love across the board for you?
Well, it took me a while to kind of get into winemaking, just because I felt kind of intimidated. But when I was learning to be a bartender and going to bartending class, I got really interested in just sort of the history of spirits and where that all comes from. And so that sort of led into my fascination with wine. And now I just feel like it's a real joyful process, and I love to keep like educating myself in that way, and working with Jordan, our winemaker that I work with, and it's just a real fun kind of collaboration, and it feels like a really safe space.
Well, you mentioned London before. Do you feel like your travels in any way have inspired you, or inspired the winemaking process for you, or future things that you might do?
Yeah, I think anytime you travel, you gain something and you learn something, and also just trying wines in different places is always really inspiring. But I think lately I've been interested in just a chilled red, which is what my friends have been kind of going for during the summer. And I want to try and play around in that space next.
What are you drinking? What are you drinking now, and what are you pairing with it food-wise?
I've been really liking the orange, just because it's newer and it feels like it's still kind of hot in LA, and it sort of is a good balance of like segueing from fall and having something that it isn't too heavy but feels kind of cozy. And then I've been really into these. At first, with the pandemic, I was really into cooking a lot, but now I'm sort of over it. And there's this pop-up restaurant that this young couple make these gourmet pizzas, but they figured out how to freeze them, and it's called Lamora Pizza. And every couple of weeks they collaborate with a different restaurant, and they do these different kind of flavors, I guess, different styles of pizza, and it's always fun to kind of match the different pizza with the different Gia wine.
And what were you cooking the most, I guess, like during the height of the pandemic, as it were, earlier this year?
I got into baking, which was something I didn't normally like, and it was always really hard for me, but I was doing a lot of baking and learning how to bake bread. But I think just the go-to is always pasta.
Of course. I mean, I feel like being from an Italian family, you must have learned to make that pretty early on, pretty exceptionally.
I don't No, I feel like I'm not that great at pasta as I'd like to be.
You're still
But
time.
I think that's why I keep trying, because I keep wanting to get better at it.
Well, what's next for you project-wise? I mean, you had a big premiere this year. So what else are you working on?
I'm just writing. It's so nice to kind of have this time to just solely focus on that. And just trying to figure out what my film mainstream will come out and sort of the strategy with that.
And have you learned any new skills or kind of learned anything about yourself personally during the pandemic?
New skills. I mean, I guess I would say I got better at cooking, which was really fun. But I also just really like this time to really catch up on old movies that I was never really making the time for, or reading books and having all of that time. And we were all in Napa during a good portion of the pandemic, so it was really nice to be with my family in that way, and all my little cousins, which is my favorite.
I heard you had quite the family gathering and pretty much the entire family was there.
Yeah, there was like 25 of us.
Wow. And you had movie nights.
What? Yeah.
Movie nights.
Yeah, that was really nice. It felt like film school.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share about wine or your role or where you want to take the wines, your family wines moving forward?
I think I kind of mentioned it, but I feel like what's fun about this brand is experimenting with new style wines that are sort of trendy at the time and see how it works within our audience, I guess, and it's so fun to kind of play around with what's hitting the mark and what's not, and how to perfect it, or maybe it was too strong that time, and that's what's cool about winemaking, is you can keep evolving it.
Well, these are delicious. I am really, really, really enjoying them. The red is great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have had the best time talking to you, so we appreciate all your time.
A special thank you also to GrapeStars, the celebrity wine and spirits platform. We have two great entrepreneurs coming on board online right now, Kevin Harrington and our dear friend, John Pelletier. Thank you guys so much for collaborating. Once again, thank you to Aston Martin Residences for hosting us in this beautiful place. And Chairman of GrapeStars, Kevin Harrington, you all know him from his Shark Tank fame, has partnered up with John. And John, I'll hand it over to you to give a brief explanation. Thank you for helping us with the celebrity wines as always. So JJ, if you could tell us a little bit about your great work and the great things coming up with GrapeStars.
First of all, Kamal, cheers to you and Haute Living. Tonight was the beginning of the holiday, if I could say. It was a very beautiful webinar podcast. It was interesting. At the end, what Mr. Coppola said about life, that what we need is our health and good friend. Well, that's it. Other than business, there are other things. But this man has been doing so much in Hollywood, in his career and his family. So I want to tell you how proud I am. And at the end, when you show this bottle, it's pretty special in your heart, I understand. Look, we're working together on different occasions. As a CEO and founder of GrapeStars, I'm very honored tonight to be part of this event and sponsor this event with Mr. Coppola. We are the first celebrity wine and spirit app. We decide to focus our mission more to the millennial, exactly what Gia was saying about the fact that the new generation are focusing on branding, and Gia, our product is simply amazing. So we believe with our app that we can serve all these 21 to 38-year-old, for sure other crowd, but truly the millennial. We've got more than 200 celebrities on our platform, from Conor McGregor, his whiskey, Sarah Jessica Parker, or wine from New Zealand, John Bon Jovi, his rosé, The Rock, and so many others. And we do have the Coppola family also. So anyway, I'm very, very honored to be here with you tonight. Kevin, I know you're on the line. Explain a little bit about your background and your involvement with us.
Cheers, Kevin.
Well, thank you. My business, just a little about me. I'm in the business of taking products direct to the consumer. Products like the Jack LaLanne juicer and Tony Little and George Foreman, the Kardashians, 50 Cent and his headphones and things like this. When I heard about what JJ was doing with celebrity wines, I said, and spirits, I said, this fits perfect with my kind of relationships and knowledge of customer acquisition and things like that. So I bring that side to the table, and we've got some, there's also new ways to market today with influencers, and we're experimenting with a number of different things that are creative for the wine industry, I believe. So we're grateful that you had us on here, Kamal. Thanks for a great webinar. And again, a toast to the Coppola family. So thank you.
GrapeStars. And we have also some great exciting news coming up with GrapeStars, because we will be doing a series of wine tastings. Danica Patrick is one of them coming up next, Mary J. Blige, Christy Brinkley. So for all our friends that enjoy the celebrity spirits and enjoy their favorite celebrities out there, we're going to do swipe ups on GrapeStars where you can get the product delivered to you the week before the tasting and actually join in with your significant other and have a great experience, especially now that we're at home now more than ever in these interesting times. So GrapeStars filled a sweet void and sweet spot throughout this last 9 months for us, at least, in being able to get all this product at home. So looking forward to a lot more great engaging experiences with you and JJ. So I know JJ has something special in his hand.
Well, I have the director Coppola, the wine. I went to his vineyard in Napa Valley, and I had the chance, to keep this as a souvenir. So tonight I have it in my hand, and it's not signed like yours, but I want to honor also the Coppola family for their involvement in the wine industry, and by building Napa Valley, because he was one of the pioneers. So thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Haute Living. Kevin, you're our chairman. Proud to have you tonight with us.
Hey, and great to be here. Thank you.
Continue the great work during this difficult moment of life. We're there to deliver alcohol and create a little, fun inside of the house of everybody.
So I'm sitting here in Miami's most anticipated luxury building, the Aston Martin Residences, obviously world famous. And next week, they're going to have the first DBX SUV here. We're going to look forward with GrapeStars and setting up a series of tastings from here. And Kevin, I know once you see this building, you may end up being the newest resident. Sexy building in Miami with a beautiful mega yacht marina. They could roll up to a 500-foot boat, which is
this downtown Miami?
Downtown Miami, and really redefining the skyline with their work. So I look forward to hosting it down here at some point, and we will be doing some more activations with GrapeStars with their residents and prospects there. So
fantastic.
Look forward to a lot of great activations.
It's beautiful what Aston Martin are doing. And Kamal, I want to congratulate you for putting Miami on the map also. You and your team are doing such an amazing job. And, it's one thing to entertain celebrities and doing events, but you're always doing it with class and respect. So GrapeStars is proud to put their name behind all your events with Haute Living. So long life to everybody.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. Great. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
And Gia, looking forward to when we can all get together and share these wines together.
In your building, I'll be there. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.